Hey guys, it's Mel. How's everyone doing? I'm gonna do a tutorial, sort of, kind of, show you how I make these fold out albums. I've shown you a couple of them the last couple of weeks, and this is another one I made. I hope my light's okay. Trying something different because I need to have a bigger setup to show you this, how I put it together. So this one is similar to the other ones. This one I've got the brad actually in the back and instead of the front. Although these don't really have necessarily a designated back and front. That's kind of the neat thing about them. And it pulls out and it looks like that. And then I've left I've just used cutouts to embellish, and then I've left them so you could tuck a photo in behind. And these papers are K & Company, and this is part of the collection, these little cutouts. They're quotes and cute sayings and things. So that's one side, and then this is the other side. And this is 5 panels. And that just pulls out as well. And I've added a little bit of lace and a little flower. So these are really simple to put together. So I'm just going to show you how I've been putting them together. So I'm going to show you a 5-panel one. And then I think I'm going to do this as a 2-part tutorial. I'm not really sure how I'm going to do this. I'm sort of winging it. But I'll show you, there's a couple ways to do the pockets. You can either have it as a piece that you glue on, or you can have it as, you can cut it out when you cut the section out. I'll just show you this. Has a little pull-out pocket as well. So I think I'm going to do a 2-part tutorial and show you both options for those pockets, and you can just watch the parts that you want. And like I said, I'm kind of winging it here. So I'll just show you quickly what you'll need to put this together. You're going to need some cardstock, and this is 12 by 12 cardstock that I have, and you're going to cut the sheets to 6 by 12. So it doesn't matter what size you start with, as long as you end up with 2 sheets of 6 by 12 cardstock. And you want to use a pretty durable cardstock. You know, some cardstocks, even the heavier ones, when you score them and fold them, they can crack along the edge. So you want something that's going to be able to take folding and unfolding as much as possible, because that's the whole point to this piece, is it's going to be folded and unfolded quite a lot. So it really has to be a paper that you feel is going to, cardstock that you feel is going to be able to handle that. You're going to need scissors. You're going to need tape and or glue. I use both tape and glue when I make these. And you're going to need some kind of ribbon to use as your tie. Ribbon or lace or string or whatever you want to do. You're going to need some sort of distress inks to do the edges if you want. That's optional. And you're going to need something to cut with other than your scissors if you want to measure and cut. And you need to be able to score your cardstock. I'm going to be using my Martha Stewart scoring table. Okay. So you're also going to need to have selected some design papers that you want to use for your album. And I am going with this bunch of papers. And this is from the Sweetest Thing stack, Recollections. The one we're going to make has 5 panels. So I've selected 5 papers. But you don't have to use one for each panel. You can use all the same paper, or you could use You could end up with 10 different papers if you want to use 5 different on one side and 5 others on the back. You know, it's up to you. So you decide how you want to decorate it. I'm going to use 5 different of one each of these on each panel, and then the same papers on the back, but probably just in a different order. So that's my plan for this album. So we will do that. So to get started on the album itself, we need to cut the cardstock to 6 by 12. Just get cleaned up here. So I'm going to just cut this 12 by 12 in half, and that's going to give us what we need for the main part of our album. And then we just need a little bit more cardstock for the pockets that we're going to make. So we'll set that aside. So now you've got two 12 by 6 pieces. And you're going to get out however you score your cardstock. I hope I'm in camera there. I'm not able to see what I'm doing this whole time with this setup. So now I'm going to score, so this is our 12 inch by 6 inches, and I'm going to score at 4 and at 8. So I've got, ending up with 3 panels of 4 by 6. And on this one I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to score at 4 and 8. Now, because it's going to be a zigzag fold, you're going to fold some in one direction and some in the other direction. So if you want, you can experiment with your papers. You may find it better to score, you may find a better, cleaner fold if you score this way for one side and then flip it and score that way for the other side. So play with that. It depends a bit on your cardstock. With this particular cardstock, and I've used it for several of these albums already, I know that I'm going to get a good clean fold whether I score it on either side. So that's just how it is with this cardstock, but you need to experiment with a little chunk of your cardstock and see how it works for you. So that's just a recommendation I have. So let me just set this aside. I'm working also around Edwina here. She's down below here, sort of helping me out, but it means it's harder for me to stand. Because I have to stand around her. So what we're going to do now is fold these sort of centered in the middle, and then get your crease nice and even that way. So that one folds that way, and then this one will fold the opposite way. Again, make it sure it's centered, and then sort of crease it out from the middle so it stays nice and even. So that gives you a Z fold or an accordion fold, which I call that a Z fold because it makes a Z shape. And then the same with the other one. You're gonna fold it, and then from the middle, you can use your fingers or you can use your scoring tool to flatten out these edges. So that one is folding that way, so this one is gonna fold the other way. Okay, so then you've got 2 pieces that are Z folds. And what we're going to do to make it all one piece is we're going to connect them together at the middle, at the end panels of one of each of them. and that will give us our full length. So we're going to glue this, and you have two options. You can just glue it down so that you end up with your full length panel, or you can glue it so that you end up with a pocket in the top. So all that would mean is just gluing around these three edges and placing it carefully so that you'll end up with a pocket that you can put tags into. You could also leave it open on both sides if you want it. It's up to you. And the third option you can do is gluing it down, is cutting this shorter and gluing down these edges and making a pocket that way. So those are just ideas. What we're going to do is I'm going to make it so that I've got a pocket to go in the top. So you want to just look at this carefully and make sure that your edges, that nothing's sort of longer or shorter, because that does happen with cardstock when you fold it. Sometimes you end up with a tiny bit longer or shorter. So you just want to make sure that you're using, that everything's even. And if you need to, you can trim off a little bit with your scissors or your cutter. Just do whatever you need to do to even it up. Now, often is the case with these, because we're going to tuck this in. I don't know if this is going to show on the camera, but when I glue this, I want it to be just before the crease on this side and just before the crease on the back as well. And so I'm going to need to trim off just a hair on each of these panels so that I can get that perfect snug fit. And the other thing you want to do is, and you should have done this, I should have mentioned this before, is make sure that you do have exactly the same 6 inches on each side, because sometimes you end up with a sheet that's a hair longer. So I'm going to just even mine up, because I do have one that's a hair longer, if you can see that. And I'll be back. Okay, so what I do at this point is I like to mark what I'm going to have as my front and my back, just to make sure that everything's going to just end up the way I want it. So this can be my front, or this can be my front, and right now everything's really evenly spaced, so it probably doesn't matter which side I pick. So I'm just going to write, we're going to cover that with paper so it doesn't matter. And then I want to mark so that I know that these two panels are going to go together in such a way that this is the part I want to stay open. So I have to mark it, or I forget. So I'm just going to put an arrow so that I know how these are going together. And like I say, we're going to cover that up with paper so it won't show. So now I'm going to use glue to glue together. You can use tape. I find that over a little bit of time and wear, the tape, they'll tend to pull away a little bit if I don't get a perfect adhesion to start with. So I ended up kind of going with glue. And just a hint to all my Canadian crafter friends, I got this large bottle of Eileen's tacky glue at Walmart. And this was, I think, $6 or $7. And the bottle that's smaller, I think it's only about that tall, at Michael's is like $11. So much cheaper price at Walmart, guys, if you haven't already checked that out. So I'm going to glue this together, and how I'm going to do it is I'm going to put glue along the edges, and I'm just going to put a sort of a bead, and then I use my finger to even it out. And I'm kind of messy at this, so you do it however it works for you. You want to have a good thick coverage, even tacky thick coverage, but try to keep it as tight as you can so that you can have the biggest tag possible fit in there. sorry, I'm not showing you. Here we go. Adding a little more glue, and then I'm gonna smooth it out. Okay. So now I'm gonna take the piece that I've marked, and I'm gonna carefully scooch it up as close as I can to that score, just before the score, so that my fold stays nice and even. It's so that it won't bulk up at my score, or at the fold. So you need to tuck it just before the score line so that your fold will work and it won't bunch up. And quickly you want to make sure you've got it happening on this side as well. And this is why you want to play with it beforehand and make sure that it's trimmed to allow you to do this. And make sure that your bottom is nice and even. And you may want to set this aside so that, and with something flat, to make it sure that it dries nice and flat. Okay, so now I'm going to get some cardstock ready to become our pocket panels. So I've got a punch I'm going to use, and this is an EK Success punch. And I'm just going to punch a full length of cardstock. So I'm going to cut this. And you can do however, you can cut them however deep you want. I'm going to cut them to be fairly shallow. So I'm going to, at the 1 inch mark, I'm going to cut this. So then I'm going to need, if I'm going to do them across, I'm going to need them 4 inches. And that we will possibly taper a little bit. So what I do is I just cut them slightly longer than 4 inches so that I can trim them once I get everything decided on which panel I'm going to use. So before we add the panels, I add the design paper. So we have to cut the design papers. And before you cut all of your design papers, you want to have an idea in your mind about how the album is going to close up. So if you're going to use a brad, are you going to put the brad through your design paper and this piece, and then is this going to show in the back? So you might want to, we'll go through that, but you might want to add your front panel paper, put your brad in, and then do your back panel paper. These are the sort of things you just need to think through. And I'll show you how I'm going to deal with it. So I'm going to cut all of my papers. These are 4x6 panels, and I'm going to cut my papers 1/8 of an inch less on each side. So I'm going to cut 6 inches minus 1/8 of an inch and 4 inches minus 1/8 of an inch. And I'm going to cut 10 panels. So I'll do that. And then I'll be back. Then what I'm going to do next is use my distress inks around the edges of all of my papers and all of the panels of my album. And this is optional, you don't have to do this. Okay, so I've got all of these inked, and I want to now decide how I'm going to lay them out on my panels. So I'll do that, figure that out, and I'll be back. Okay, so now I've decided where I'm going to put which papers I'm going to put on each panel, and I know which is my front panel and which is my back panel. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use my tape gun to tape all the panels on. You can use glue if you want to. Depends on, you know, what you prefer, what works better with your papers, and what holds the best for you in your area that you live. So I'm going to put, adhere these. I'm going to leave the front cover because I'm going to do something a little different with it, so that our closure will work. But all the rest of the panels I will add the papers. Okay, so I've put the paper on all of the panels except for the front cover. And I've got another piece of cardstock that we cut out earlier, and I'm going to put the design paper on that piece of cardstock. So that is going to be our front cover. And I am going to use a brad, this brad. Okay, so to put this brad on, I'm going to put it through this panel, and I'm going to just do a hole where I want it. Okay, I want it just lower than center and in quite a bit. So I'm going to put it through and open it. And I'm leaving, I don't know if you can see that, but I am letting there be a gap because we want the ribbon to be able to wind around. And what I'm going to do to make sure this isn't going to go anywhere is I'm going to put a few drops of glossy accents in here. White glue would also work to just keep it stable. So I'm going to put a few drops of glossy accents and I'm going to let that dry. Okay, so my glossy accents has set, and this brad is a little more stable in there. So what I'm going to do now is glue this panel down to my front cover so that it will stay, and then you won't be able to see the back side of the brad. So the alternative would be to put the brad right through, and then I could have put this panel on, but these papers are pretty thin, so it wouldn't, you'd still feel the brad there and it would probably get in the way. So that's why I'm doing this, and it also gives my cover just an extra durability with the thickness of the double cardstock. So I'm just going to glue this right down. And you're going to set this on again just before that score so that it won't get in the way of your nice score. Where the brad is, it will tend to pull up a bit because there is a bit of a gap in there, so you may want to clip it. And you also want to try to get this to dry as flat as possible. So we'll just let that dry for a little bit. Okay, I'm back, and this panel has dried now, and it's just a nice thick panel. So there we have our book with all of the pages in it. So what we need to do now is add in a couple of the little pockets. So you just need to decide where you want to put them. And I know I want to put one here. So that's going to be here. I'm just sorting out what it's going to be like with the pockets. Okay, so I think I'm going to do one in this first panel and then on the same material or print on this panel. So I have taken my pieces of card that I punched and I've put a bit of ink on them. And now I'm just going to cut them. So you're just going to eye it and measure it and just get it as close as tight as you can, making sure that when the panels are on that they're not going to bunch up when you fold them. So you kind of have to just play with it. So this is going to fold this way. So I'm just sort of playing with it to make sure it's not going to bulk up and everything's going to tuck in. So now I'm going to ink the other parts now that I've cut it all. Okay, and now I'm going to glue them on with the tacky glue, or you can use your tape to put them on. It's up to you, it's up to what you like to do best. So I'm just going to get some glue on there. Make sure you get some good coverage. I'm using my finger again, but you may not want to do that. Okay, and this side, the same thing. You could do pockets on every panel if you want. It's entirely up to you. On this one I've done a long panel on that one and a little pocket on that one. So, you know, mix and match them or do whatever you want to do. So now we'll just let those set and keep them flat for a few minutes. Okay, so I've decided on the placement for my little tag embellishments. I'm not sure what you call them. And I'm going to adhere them to the same cardstock we used for the album, just to make a little frame for them. And then I've inked all of these with the linen distress ink, and I'm going to adhere them with some my ATG gun. And then I'm going to cut them with and leaving this little frame, and then I'm going to ink those edges. So I'm going to do that for all of them. Okay, so I've inked all around these and mounted them on some cardstock, and I've decided where they're going to go on my album. So now I'm going to adhere them, and I'm going to use glue again to adhere these, and I'm going to leave space so that photos could tuck up in behind if people wanted to do that. So I'm just going to glue, in this case, these two edges. Again, it's totally optional that you embellish in this way. It's your album, so embellish it however you like. So I'm going to let that side dry just for a few minutes, and then I'm going to do the other side. Okay, so I've added all of the little embellishment corners to the areas I want to add them to on both sides. So that's how it's looking. And I went ahead and made the tags that are going to fit in these pockets. And this this tag is going to fit in each of the pockets. I'm just going to measure it here. So it is 5 by 3 1/4. That one, 5 by 3 1/4. And that fits into that pocket. And this one fits into that pocket. And this is the one to fit in this pouch here. And that one is 5.75 by 3. So I cut my tags and then I cut papers again just 1/8 of an inch shorter on each side. And I added the design papers on each side, and I inked everything with the same ink, and I added a little bit of this lace just to add a little prettiness and softness. And I did that on both sides, and both of them have the same pattern on each side, or you can use different papers or whatever you want to do and embellish them however you want. But you have to remember with this book you want to keep it pretty simple with the embellishments, because it really needs, it can't get too thick because it's gonna it doesn't really support any bulkiness. It has no gussets. So with this one I decided to round corner the tops, and I added a little ribbon. So I'm just going to add from that same lace. It's this one that I have in my stash. Very pretty. I've just cut out a couple of the flowers, and I'm going to add them on the front. I wanted to do something with lace on the front, but it was too much. It wasn't working for me. So, but this I think is going to be cute, so I'm just going to add those on the front like that. I'm just going to adhere with a little bit of white glue. Okay, now I'm going to adhere the ribbon onto this, and this is how it's going to tie up. So you want to close it up and just sort of, this is just how I do it. I hold the ribbon and I want it to be able to wrap around at least 2 or 3 times, plus have some extra. So I know that I've got more than enough. So what I do is just get it on there and tie a knot. Make sure it's tight and against the post of the brad. And then I do another knot, make sure it's tight, and then I want to get in here right by the knot and get a little drop of glossy accents in there, and I try to not, you know, get it on everything else. Okay, so this is completely dry in here now, so I'm just going to snip this off tight in there so the little end won't be visible. And then just want to wrap it around a few times so that there's lots of extra ribbon, so that if it does get a little bit thicker, there'll still be lots of room to tie it up. And then Just cut it. And you can just tie a simple knot to keep it from fraying, or you can add a pretty bead or a charm if you'd like to. Just like to keep everything simple on the front and back cover, because the idea is that this is something someone could carry in their purse or keep in their desk at work. So I don't think it works for those, if you're going to use it that way, to have a lot of embellishments on the front and back. But you could, do this your own way, and if you want to make it have more embellishments on the front, if it's something you're going to keep at home, then go for it. So there's the little album already. And so this was going to be part 1 of my tutorial, and in part 2 I'm going to do a 5x7 panel album with gusseted pockets so that you could fit a little bit more in it. Show you that one more time. And so I hope you enjoyed this, and I will see you guys soon. And thank you so much for watching. Bye!